In this video, we're going to be going over the basics of blood flow through the heart. And the heart is absolutely vital in shuttling blood both to and from the lungs as well as to and from the rest of the body. The heart, it basically takes blood to the lungs, and in the lungs the blood loses most of its carbon dioxide and gains a bunch of oxygen, and the blood returns to the heart and then it's now newly oxygenated, and that blood then supplies the cells of the rest of the body, including cells of the organs, muscles, most of which rely on oxygen to carry out the many functions that they do. And so the heart delivers blood and oxygen, because the blood now contains oxygen, to those cells of the body, and then the blood returns back to the heart, then goes to the lungs and picks up oxygen, loses carbon dioxide, and that cycle continues. This video, we're going to be going over that cycle, and so here you can see here's a diagram of the heart and many of its components, but we're just going to be focused on the path of blood flow through the heart in this video. So you can see this structure here called a superior vena cava, and here you have the inferior vena cava. Well, these are veins. These are large veins that take blood from everywhere but the lungs, and this is blood that is now deoxygenated after it's come from the rest of the body, delivered oxygen to the rest of the body. So here, let me write. I'm just going to put it here. Let me use black. This is deoxygenated. Hopefully you can read that. Blood. And so is this. This is also deoxygenated blood. And so this blood empties into the right atrium, which is one of the 4 chambers of the heart. You have the right and left atria, which are the smaller chambers, and then you have these much larger right and left ventricles. And I know this looks as if it's on the left side, but we are looking from the perspective of the person's heart. So this is it appears on the left side when you're looking from the front, right? But when you're standing in the perspective of the person whose heart it is, this is actually the right side of the heart. This is the right atrium. This is the right ventricle here. This is the left atrium, and this is the left ventricle. Okay, so deoxygenated blood flows. So this is blood from everywhere but the lungs that has been removed of oxygen and picked up carbon dioxide. Remember, the cells of the body use the oxygen and create carbon dioxide as a metabolic waste product. But so this deoxygenated blood flows into the right atrium, and then through this Atrioventricular valve. This is just the valve separating the right atrium from the right ventricle, and the one on the right is called a tricuspid valve. Okay, it has three cusps, or three sets of flaps here, so it's called a tricuspid valve. So it flows through the tricuspid valve, and this valve can either be open or closed. So when the valve opens, it flows into the right ventricle, and then there's another valve here, and this is called the pulmonary or pulmonic valve, pulmonary or pulmonic semilunar valve, and it serves as a gate between the blood flowing from the right ventricle into the right and left pulmonary arteries. So this is the left pulmonary artery, and this is the right pulmonary artery. So when this valve, this pulmonary semilunar valve opens, blood can be pumped from the right ventricle into this pulmonary artery, which subdivides into the left and right pulmonary arteries. And from here, the blood goes. So this is the right pulmonary artery, this is the left pulmonary artery, right? So from here, the blood goes to the lungs. Where it picks up oxygen and loses carbon dioxide. So you breathe out the carbon dioxide, you breathe in the oxygen, and then the blood returns to the heart via these pulmonary veins, these right and left pulmonary veins, and enters the left atrium. And you can see between the left atrium and the left ventricles that there's other valve here, the left atrioventricular valve, and this is called the bicuspid valve because you can see it contains two cusps or flaps here. And sometimes this is also called the mitral valve. Alright, so when this valve opens, the blood flows from the left atrium to the left ventricles, and it collects in the left ventricles, and when the time is right for it to be pumped, there's this valve called the aortic semilunar valve that serves as a gate between the left ventricle and the aorta here. The aorta is this large artery here. But so when this aortic semilunar valve, when it opens, blood is pumped from the left ventricle to the aorta and through it, and this aorta splits into many branches that delivers this newly oxygenated blood. And I should have said that, okay, this from the right and left pulmonary arteries, the blood goes to the lungs, and it re-enters through the left and right pulmonary veins. But this blood here is newly oxygenated blood, so this is oxygenated. Ignore that yellow mark here. I don't know how it got on this. So this here is oxygenated blood. So this newly oxygenated blood flows into from the right atrium to the right ventricle when this bicuspid valve opens, and when the semilunar valve opens, it flows up the aorta, and which splits and delivers the blood this newly oxygenated blood to the cells of the body that utilize the oxygen for their various metabolic processes, and you'll get and they'll produce carbon dioxide as a waste product, and that deoxygenated blood once again re-enters the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava and flows into the right atrium and then into the right ventricle, and this cycle continues. But that's basically the path of blood flow through the heart. And to recap, you have these four chambers. The smaller atria here, this cursor's freezing on me. So the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricle, the left ventricle. Between the atria and ventricles, you have these two atrioventricular valves. The right atrioventricular valve has 3 flaps, so it's called the tricuspid valve. The left atrioventricular valve has 2 flaps, so it's called the bicuspid valve. You'll sometimes see the term mitral valve. Mitral valve. And from these two ventricles, separating them from the pulmonary and aortic arteries respectively, you have the pulmonary semilunar valve separating the right ventricle from the pulmonary artery, which in turn divides into the left and right pulmonary arteries. And here you have the aortic semilunar valve separating the left ventricle from the aorta, which subdivides into many branches afterward. And at a very high level, those are basically the components of the heart, and that's basically what I described in this video is the path of blood flow through the heart. At the very highest level, there's some details that I have glossed over, one being how is blood actually supplied to the heart itself. The heart is a muscle, and heart contains muscle. It's an organ that contains muscle that needs oxygen as well and generates carbon dioxide as a metabolic byproduct. So what supplies the heart with blood? And that wasn't covered here, but perhaps I'll cover that in a future video.